On today's World Insight, empowering women. As the global leaders meeting on women is set to convene in Beijing, WTO Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala looks back at China's role in advancing gender equality and how countries in Africa are advancing women's rights and opportunities. Hear from Hannatu Musawa, the Nigerian Minister of Art, Culture, Tourism and the Creative Economy.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. Today, another episode of She, a series of special interviews devoted to women leadership and gender equality in our world today. 30 years ago, the Chinese capital hosted a landmark gathering which yielded the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, a landmark blueprint for advancing gender equality in our world. WTO Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who took part in that historic meeting, recently recalled her fond memories of that event. She said female leaders are now thriving and that empowering women benefiting families, nations, and the world. Let's take a look at an excerpt of my latest exclusive interview with the WTO Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Madam DG, as you know, 30 years ago, the International Women's Conference was held. It was the very first time clearly made to the rest of the world that women's rights are human rights. And I see you over the past decades, a very strong leader, not only for global governance, but also for women as well.
Thank you.
Championing gender equity. Now, this year is likely to be another important conference being held in China to mark 30 years. It's called Beijing Plus 30. So at this critical juncture, when the world is changing so much, what do you think the role of women leadership in the dramatically changing world?
Well, first I was at the Beijing conference in 1995 myself.
Can I? Can I?
I was a young woman then, younger.
I was the youngest Chinese volunteer then.
You know, so I have very fond memories of that conference, and it was a very dear thing to those of us women. And since then, one has, of course, had a lot of experience and been privileged to be in leadership. And I think what the world needs to recognize is that women are not, you don't need to bring women in leadership because they are women. It is because they merit it and they have a lot to contribute. And I think that women leaders have demonstrated, so many of them, that women can bring very good contributions, whether in whatever area of leadership they are in. And I could go on naming woman after woman who has demonstrated that. I don't think we need to do that. A lot of studies now show that bringing women into the economy, empowering them is good, not only for their families, but for their countries and for the world. So I think that the right thing to do is to open the way so that there can be more women in leadership. There's still too few. When I sit here and people tell me you're the first woman and the first African, I have very mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, it's a good thing. On the other hand, I'm saying so late in the game, is the first woman and the first African. We don't have to be in this position because we are women or Africans, but we have to be in the position because we are merit-worthy to lead the organization. And if the leader is a woman and an African, good. But there are many women who have the qualifications. When I was doing the interview for my job, I was a little impertinent. And I said to them, what you need is the best person to lead this organization and help it change and help it reform. And I said, if it's a woman, and I said to them, well, of course, I think I can do it, you know, but you need the best person. And I think, and I'm grateful that I got the job, But it's not because I'm a woman and African, it's because the people there thought, here's someone who can lead this organization. I want people to think of women in that light. There are so many women with so many good qualifications. And if you look at the younger generation of women, you'll be so proud. So many of them have the qualities it takes. So let's give women even more of a chance now that we're at Beijing plus 30.
Yeah. I was reading a book that you wrote about, it's called Reform the Unreformable. So what do you think is needed in order to get that done? Very briefly from you.
Briefly, I think it is the political will of members. And political will goes beyond ambassadors in Geneva. I do not believe that ambassadors alone can tackle the reforms. Yeah. We need ministers to be involved. We need leaders to be involved. Yeah. And I'm very grateful that many members, many ministers and leaders are also coming together now and saying we will support the reform.
What do you think is the role of WTO today? And how much do you think the reform will be able to bring WTO for its potential?
Well, we don't buy into any of the descriptions are coming out of frustration. I think the role of the WTO is to provide stability and predictability in world trade. And business people trade. And many of the business people from all our members, they understand very well the value of the WTO. Business people who trade want predictability and stability. They want to know that when their goods go from one country to another, that they're going to arrive and they will know how the goods will be valued, what tariffs to expect, and therefore how marketable their goods will be in the country that is importing those goods and whether they'll make a profit out of it. So that the predictability of global rules is what the WTO stands for, and the stability. And so I think that this is what is important. People take the system for granted. They expect to walk into a store and just find the goods they want to buy sitting there. But the rules that underpin that trade that brings the goods is not well known. Now, we also need to admit that you talked about reforms, that the WTO needs to listen to criticisms. And the WTO is made up of its members, and many of them are criticizing one thing or the other about the way it functions. This is a golden opportunity for members to say, okay, global trade is in a crisis, let's seize the opportunity to do the reforms and tackle the challenges of the system and make it even better.
And now in the reform, you have been talking to both your staff and to the international community about how to preserve, how to reform, and how to follow up and update the WTO system for the new trends. Among them, do you prioritize? Obviously, you cannot do all the things all at the same time. How to prioritize them?
But I think the way you put it, Tianwei, is very, very good. Because I think the first objective in my second term is to say, what is it that works? What works for the global trading system at the WTO? And there are some very important things that work that I alluded to. The fact that 72% of world trade is still on WTO terms today. It's down from 80% at the beginning of the year pre-tariffs. But now we're still at 72%. That's a high number. How do we preserve that? The second thing is, what are the other rules within the WTO that are important we need to preserve? We have, the WTO helps to set standards on human safety and product safety in trade. It builds trust. How do we preserve that? Most members value that. So secondly, we have other agreements on intellectual property protection, for instance, that are also very valued by the business community. How do we preserve that? So preserving what works. The second is to ask the question, what doesn't work? We cannot be complacent. We have many things, many challenges to fix. And that is, so the priority number one is preserving what works. Priority number two is fixing what does not work. And among that, we have issues to look at. There are several that are important. One, how we make decisions. The world is changing very, very fast. with technology advancing and AI at a fast pace, the organization needs to be more nimble, more flexible, more swift to deliver for the world. And so we have a consensus decision-making system, unanimity, which is very valuable, meaning the smallest member has the same power as the largest. But we need to make it work better so that we can make decisions faster. So
plurilateral, for example?
That means what that can translate into is that perhaps when there's an issue to solve, a coalition of willing members who find that issue very important can get together and decide to work on it and to come to an agreement, and other members who do not particularly want to join can let them get ahead with it. So more flexible plurilaterals and decision-making systems, that could be one. Looking at issues of fair trade, many members complain about each other's trading practices. The issue is, can we be very candid and specific? What is it that is not fair? How do we solve those unfair? How do we, how do we give incentives so that members can do the right thing? How do we become more transparent? So that is another set of reforms we can look at. So just to give you a couple of examples of some of the priority things we need to look at. Then the last thing, the last set of issues to look at is there are many exciting things happening in the trade world. We've got digital trade, we've got the advent of AI. By the way, our latest World Trade Report that looks at the role of AI in trade indicates what we call 40 by 40, that the value of trade could increase by 40% by 2040 with AI. But that means we also have to have the right policies in place. If we don't, it could result in some countries being left behind. How do we look at these new issues and encourage digital trade, green trade, other aspects of trade, services trade, which is growing very fast?
What do you make of the current reality of global governance as the Director General of WTO, which is the one and only in the world on global trading system?
Well, I think that the multilateral trading system that was built over 80 years ago, and global governance in general, has centered around developing institutions for global cooperation. There are so many problems in the world that cannot be solved by one country alone, and that is why you need multilateral cooperation. Let's just take pandemics. Tomorrow we could see another one. There isn't a single country on its own that can deal with a pandemic. You need global cooperation to be able to come up with answers. So multilateral institutions are needed. But there's no doubt that they need to reform so that they can be able to deal more swiftly with the problems of today and tomorrow. So I think multilateralism is key. I think it needs to be reformed to be nimbler, swifter. And I think China has been a strong supporter of multilateralism, and at the WTO, a strong support, especially with dealing with developing countries in terms of capacity building and support. And we hope that countries that are major economies and leaders will continue to find a way to, yes, help solve global problems through international cooperation, through global institutions.
You have been very instrumental, Madam DG, in bringing in young trade leaders into the conversation of WTO, and also to bring in the voices coming from the global south, developing countries, especially the least developed economies. Now, how much do you think that conversation can continue, given the fact that some describe the world today, it is the rules of the jungle?
Well, first of all, let me thank my colleagues in the organization, because the staff of the WTO and the managers worked really hard, so I want to give them credit. But that being said, it's so fabulous to have young global leaders. It's so fabulous to think of trying to give the South as much of a voice. The young global leaders are important because we need to listen to the young people. They are the next generation of the future. They need to tell us, is this trading organization being relevant for our issues? Is it delivering for us? What does it need to do to change the way it is doing business? I really like to listen to young people. I like to listen to the business community and to civil society. Okay, so for us, it's very refreshing. And then in terms of the South, developing countries and least developed countries join this organization, expecting the organization to help them prosper their people more. And one of the purposes of the WTO, or the purpose, is to enhance living standards, to help create employment, and to support sustainable development. And the question least developed countries and other poor countries are asking is it doing this? So it's important to enhance their voice and say, look, we need to do better. They have been stagnating at 1% of trade. The 44 least developed countries are only 1% of world trade. Is that sufficient? The answer is no. We need to do more. And it is good that China is opening up its markets. It has announced zero tariffs for African countries. I hope they can take adequate advantage of these opportunities so we can trade, they can trade more, expand their share of the markets. Africa's share of global trade is less than 3% and has not been increasing for many years. So whatever China can do to encourage that. The second thing to encourage that also is investment. We need to deal with the risk perception of developing countries that they are too risky. We need supply chains to decentralize to developing countries, create jobs, create value so they can trade more.
Madam Director General, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you, Tianwei.
Thank you. That's my latest interview with Director General of the World Trade Organization, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. And this is World Insight. Coming up in the program, insights from Hannatu Musawa, the Nigerian Minister of Art, Culture, Tourism, and Creative Industry, on empowering women as the key to social progress. Welcome back. I'm Tian Wei, and this is World Insight. Today, another episode devoted to She, our special interview series of women leadership and gender equality. Women's rights are human rights. This landmark declaration was first proclaimed at the Beijing World Conference on Women 30 years ago, placing women's welfare in developing country at its core. Recently, I had an in-depth exchange with Hannatu Musawa, the Nigerian Minister of Art, Culture, Tourism, and Creative Industry. As a leading female figure in her country, she is dedicated to showing African culture worldwide, advocating women's empowerment with education as its cornerstone. Let's listen to my latest conversation with her. Now, we used to, China and Africa, including with Nigeria, look at each other through a third person's eyes.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's not accurate.
No.
And not to mention, there is sometimes misinformation.
Yeah.
So how important it is that we are looking at each other directly in the eyes.
You know, we have been defined for all too long as, like you said, through other people's eyes. And in the most part, it has been to our detriment because it is not a reflection of who we are. We are a people who love culture, who have an identity. We're a people who have ideals and a tradition that we are so proud about. So now, you know, being able to do this direct connectivity is important for us to teach ourselves. And with the population that you have in China and the population we have in Nigeria and the growing prominence of the two countries and the growing prominence of a unity of the global South, I think it is very important. And like I said before, this industry is the easiest way that we can resonate our stories. So by bringing our festivals together, our culture, our creativity, our fashion, our love for fashion, and our love for just our history and our heritage together, and doing that by imbibing it through the creative industry, that's through the fashion, through the animation, through the gaming, through the gastronomy, our love for food, through the film and the music, I think it is the fastest way for us to teach us about who we are through our own eyes and grabbing our own stories and telling it to the world.
For example, there are quite a number of very well-known movies around the world made about Africa.
Yeah.
Or about life in Africa.
Yeah.
Starting from Out of Africa to all the other big names of the movies.
Yeah.
How do you, as a Nigerian culture figure, look at the legacies that these works created, positive and negative?
Yeah.
What does that mean for your industry?
I think it means a lot for my industry. For example, you look at literature, which is under my industry. We have the likes of Wole Soyinka, a Nobel laureate. You have the likes of Chidimanda Adoke, which is a Nigerian. You have Chinua Achebe's, right? We have up-and-coming artists. We have poets. And it sets the scene for the prominence of Nigeria. And it's not about an individual, it's about a people, because you are a part of a people. And you look at within the art industry as well. You look at within the music industry, the Felas, your Sades, your Seals, even the international artists of Nigerian descent. These all play a part in setting a narrative, and the importance of speech and the importance of participation and just to be there. And you look at even in the Chinese industry, the likes of Jackie Chan. Everywhere you go, even in the most remote villages in Nigeria, people that may not even have conventional education, but they know who Jackie Chan is. And you know, so this is representation.
And they know the martial arts.
And martial arts. You look at Bruce Lee. I'm still obsessed with Bruce Lee because I watched him growing up. So, you know, this is participation and this is an identity. So, you know, it is important for us to participate at the very national level because it's inclusivity. Whether anyone likes it or not, it is us being included on the international stage. So it is important for us to participate. It is important for us to see within the creative industry. And within the creative industry, there are 49 subsectors in the animation. Look at China when it comes to gaming, the animation, in the IT sector, right? These are...
And also movies, right?
And in the movies.
Which is the biggest blockbuster.
Well, there you go. So you can't discountenance that. So it is important for us to see we participate and to support our identity and our participation and just having a platform and a vision on the creative industry, because by doing that we force the narrative to change, and just by doing that we force our inclusivity of our own identity, and we are who we are. We are our ideals, we are identity, and we cannot be discountenanced once we are visible. Yeah.
You are from a country that is very diverse and also populous, an important nation on the African continent. You're in charge of so many important areas, including culture, tourism. Now, what do you think will speak to people's heart these days?
I think perhaps one of the most luckiest people of my time and my generation to be given a responsibility in the area of art, culture, creativity, and of course tourism. This is the area that really speaks to people. You know, we are evolving in a world whereby I think as nations we have to look inward, to look at how we use our strengths and perhaps different partnerships.
And of course the culture is coming from Nigeria so different from, let's just say, from the East, including from China. So how do you see so far the momentum of exchanges and curiosity about each other?
I think first of all, Nigeria is quite diverse. When you talk about 200 plus million different diversities, you know, this is 200 plus diversities as different as perhaps Chinese and German. It's very different. We don't look alike, we speak differently, we eat differently, but we see that, or we as a government, as an administration, want to bring that as a form of strength. So in Nigeria, you will find a reflection of the Middle East, a reflection of the West, of the East. It's all in Nigeria. We want to package that as a Nigerian brand, to be able to look at perhaps the culture here in China, to see how we can educate the Chinese as to the brilliance that we have and the appreciation of our different cultures, of our gastronomy, of our fashion. And I think I see that being in China in the last couple of days. I can see a reflection of what we have in Nigeria. And I think doing this cultural exchange that we are actively.
Madam Minister, I see you are walking a beautiful balance between looking inward at your own cultural heritage and your own strengths, while at the same time valuing and learning and exploring others' cultures, especially, for example, this time in China.
Yes, absolutely.
And that is a fine balance. Sometimes people talk about one size too much, ignoring the other, or vice versa. How do you see that fine balance for African leaders?
I think the balance. It is a fine balance, but I think is a necessary balance. So it's an intentional one that you have to do, even if it doesn't have to be done with the finesse that we've done it in the past. I think we have to go in headstrong, especially with the commitment that both of our presidents made last year in the state visit. Headlong is very important for China and Africa to connect. And I have to say this because, China has always extended its hand to Africa with an independence of Africa. It has always shown Africa partnership and a unity based on mutual respect. And I think this is very key, this is very important. So even though it is a fine balance, but I think it is one that we have to go in head first. We are a people of culture. And I tell you, the Chinese people, just being here, just being able to feel the energy.
What do you, sitting where you are, look at the women leadership, both in your country, on the African continent, and even beyond?
To be honest, I think we need to do more. That is the truth of the matter. And we understand that if you want to raise a society and a community, you have to empower the women. And this is where we as an African society continue to lag behind. But I think most of the African administrations now are being very active in ensuring that we raise the chances of women, whether in leadership. But because of the culture and because of the different traditions, it has been very difficult for us to push that through. So we continue to imbibe that through the educational system. And what is important with us being in positions of leadership is that we can show other women in our communities that it is possible, because if we are able to do it, they're able to do it as well. So we have to continue to look at what Beijing meant to us. And I've seen in China, women leadership seems very important. So this is another thing that we want to learn and to see how we can participate and partner with China and be inspired. So I hope this is one thing we can also benefit from this partnership.
Well, you've got a lot of wonderful and outstanding Nigerian ladies around the world that are working in important positions.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And it's such a wonderful thing to see you in Chengdu.
Yes, I love it.
And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on X and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of my team. Thanks for being with us. And that wraps up our special edition of the program, focusing on She, an interview series on the topic of women leadership and gender equality in our world. Bye for now.